So a petition has been launched in Glasgow, directed at the Glasgow City Council, to take in some of the so-called refugees that are currently on Greek islands. It says here in this article from the Glasgow Times that the Glasgow Must Act, the Glasgow branch of Europe Must Act, launched a petition on March the 17th asking the council to provide shelter for 1,500 volunteers currently residing in Greece. It is inspired by Berlin, which declared itself ready to accept a similar number of so-called refugees. Europe Must Act's petition has more than 100,000 signatures and is backed by 10 MEPs and 160 NGOs. Amy Skelton, a volunteer for Glasgow Must Act, said, "I volunteered at an NGO supporting residents of a refugee camp in Greece for 2 years, both in the field and remotely. So far, 13 NGOs and more than 700 individuals have signed the Glasgow Must Act petition." Well, isn't that something? Isn't that great? And I had a feeling this was coming, as about a month or two ago I made a video that I never actually put out. If you recall, I said I didn't want to put it up for fear of getting banned for flipping out, to say the least, in relation to this little shit who wrote the article. However, it says here from the 24th of March 2020, talking point, refugees are more vulnerable than ever, and I'm just going to skip some of the gobbledygook that he refers to. However, he says down here, a functioning and humane emergency asylum programme needs to be implemented. That's what hundreds of charities and so-called NGOs, including the Scottish Refugee Council, have come together to demand under the banner of a new campaign called Europe Must Act. Now, of course, the Scottish Refugee Council, they're the ones that have come up with their New Scots integration strategy, which says here, setting out how Scotland will support people to build meaningful and sustainable lives here. There's nothing sustainable about what these people are trying to do. However, the New Scots vision for a welcoming Scotland where refugees and people seeking asylum are able to rebuild their lives from the day they arrive. And this continual muddying of the waters and conflation here, people coming over here and claiming asylum, falsely or rightly, we'll never know. Because of this namby-pamby pondering that's on display here by all these organisations, these charities, these NGOs, these social justice warriors, or human rights defenders is their more apt term. With all of these things in place for these people, they can come over here and claim asylum and just make out that they're fleeing the harrowing plight of wherever they came from, and they get the red carpet treatment. It's a system that's been exploited, and this crap about human rights is not helping. That's the point. The strategy provides an important platform for everyone in Scotland to work together to welcome and support the development of many skills and talents that so-called refugees bring with them when seeking protection here. That's great. That's so fantastic. The strategy commits partners to work to ensure that Scotland is a place of safety for everyone, where people are able to live free from persecution as valid members of communities. Not Scotland, though, the communities that they come from. Everyone is able to pursue their ambitions through education, employment, culture and leisure activities. Why, as the laws have always stood, refugees do not work. So why are you trying to bend the rules? What makes them different from an economic migrant if they have the ability to work? They come over here to flee persecution. They don't come over here to work in Tesco's. Scotland is strong. Oh, I can get this. Scotland has strong, inclusive and resilient communities. That's funny. That's really funny. Where everyone is able to access the support and services they need and is able to exercise their rights. It's a country that values diversity. No, it fucking doesn't. Where people are able to use and share their culture, skills and experiences as they build strong relationships and connections. The same as Scottish Refugee Council that's been complicit in burying the refugee rape gang. But we won't talk about that because I'm far right and racist, apparently, if I mention that. Anyway, I'm digressing. It then says, what can Scottish politicians do? Talk about it for a start. With the exception of Neil Findlay, not a single MSP has tweeted about it. Joanna Cherry raised it at Westminster, but politicians who talk up internationalism and European values could say more, particularly EU contacts. First of all, anybody that preaches about internationalism, red flags, alarm bells ringing. Second of all, what are you talking about European values? With the European Union? Fuck off, man. EMA launched a petition, sign it, try and get the UK government to join and expand efforts by the voluntary coalition of countries, including Finland, France, Croatia, who have pledged to take 1,500 unaccompanied children before the COVID-19 lockdown. Unaccompanied children, another ruse, because that brings chain migration. The children come over first and their parents have a right to be brought in later. So another one that came out regarding this was from the As the world combats an unprecedented health crisis, the European Network of Ombudspersons for Children has released an open letter highlighting that refugee and migrant children are facing a human rights emergency. The letter draws to the situation at camps in the Greek islands and the Greece-Turkey border, where children's most basic rights are deprived, including shelter, yada yada. An increasing number of children and young people are struggling with severe mental health issues that you don't know that for a certain. You're just assuming. Children are trapped in overcrowded, unsanitary living conditions amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and they were living in unsanitary and overcrowded conditions prior to this lockdown. Let's not forget, they've been there for some time. And I mean, it was only very recently, Greece migrant crisis, islanders strike over overcrowded camps. They're trying to get rid of them. And this is what this is all about. The premise of all of this is because they want rid of them out of their islands. And the fact of the matter is, a good chunk of these people are being escorted over here from Turkey. They are leaving from Turkey to Greek islands. They're heading to Greece to then get processed and then enter Europe. So the rationale or the normal thing to do would be to deport the ones that have no valid claim, and, if you must, accept the ones that do. But the fact of the matter is, the majority of them don't. So technically what this is all about, what they're trying to do with this petition, and this Europe Must Act organisation, is to skip the middleman. Instead of them all crowding up in Greek islands, just let them here. Let them skip the process of trying to have their claim accepted in Greece. So the petition on their website on change.org says the following. There is a humanitarian so-called crisis taking place at Europe's borders. 40,000 asylum seekers are currently trapped on the Aegean Islands, forced to live in overcrowded camps with limited medical services and inadequate sanitary facilities. These inhumane conditions are the result of 5 years of neglectful EU policies. No, that's funny, I don't like the EU, but it has to be said. These people are so brain dead and so deluded that they don't understand they are a major part of this problem and always have been. The NGOs, the charities, these wankers, whatever they are, the activists, the lefty politicians, all of them, the ones that have done everything in their power to entice them here, to prolong their stay when they arrive, until their claim is processed or whatever, and everything in their power they can to accommodate them. You try your damnedest to attract as many as possible, welcome them all in with open arms, and then the process repeats itself. And let's just say, for example, that these camps in the Greek islands were all emptied. What do you then think would happen? What do you think would happen after that? Do you think that would be the end of it? No. What about the ones that have been squatting in Turkey for some time, who have been recently trying to break in via the Greek border? You know, the clashes and whatnot from last month or the month prior. No mention, of course, of Turkey taking them in. No. It's fine for them to sit and squalor in Turkey, but it's not fine for Greeks to protect their fucking border. So let's say that the Greeks or the Europe in general let them in. What do you think happens after that fact? More arrive. It's been the way of it since this shit started. It's not a crisis. A crisis can be averted. A crisis is something out of your control, as I refer to quite a lot when it comes to this so-called pandemic. But the same is true for the migrant crisis, if you want to call it that. You could quite easily have taken these boats back, but instead of that, we had protesters, we had NGOs, we had politicians doing everything in their power to get them here. And every single time a boat docks and lets more in, the boat goes and gets more. The process repeats itself. So quite frankly, I don't give a fuck about the shit conditions they're currently in. Maybe the people that have tried their arm at a fake asylum claim should have thought about that. But no. You shave your hair off and dye the rest blue and stand there with refugee welcome banners. And all of a sudden you've got the inside scoop. You know what's going on. Even in the light of the so-called pandemic, EU leaders have remained indifferent or hesitant to act. The EU Commission has promised to relocate 1,600 unaccompanied minors, a step in the right direction, but not good enough. The horrendous conditions in these camps make all inhabitants, regardless of age or health, extremely vulnerable. So EU leaders need a wake-up call. Oh, they do they? The EU leaders need a wake-up call. The EU leaders are supposedly, in theory, supposed to serve European people, and the people want an end to migration. The people want this shit to stop, but no, it doesn't stop. It never does. And if these people were of any worth, and I don't mean that in derogatory terms, I'm talking about skill-wise and whatnot. Not that you need much of that these days anyway, but they could quite easily go through the legal methods. You know, just coming over here as an economic migrant, Britain seems to be quite fine and content with letting them in. Europe cannot stand by and leave behind these children, women and men in these camps. In order to save lives, the camps on the islands must be completely evacuated. On the 30th of March, the mayor and citizens of Berlin pledged to take in 1,500 refugees. Now we ask cities across Europe to join Berlin by pledging to take in an exact number of refugees and asylum seekers from these camps. It is time for Glasgow to... And how do you know any of them are refugees? They're all asylum seekers. Every single fucking one of them. It's time for Glasgow to join Berlin. We must show that our reputation for openness and hospitality is more than a cliche. We have done this before. By 2018, following the UK's pledge to take in 20,000 refugees fleeing Syria, Glasgow had accepted more refugees from camps in Turkey, Lebanon, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan. Wow. More than any other UK local authority. Now we must do it again. And Somalia and all that. I mean, let's not forget on the Refugees Welcome or Scottish Refugee Council's website. I mean, we've got Somalia, Kurdish, Irani, whatever that is, and whatever that is. It's not just Syrians and Iraqis. You know? What the fuck? Anyway, sorry. It then says, we must lead the way in the United Kingdom and in Europe to evacuate the camps and put an end to this human tragedy. See what I mean? So instead of these people being sent back to where they came from, the camps were only overcrowded because more and more and more kept pouring in from all over the Middle East and Africa, and their solution is to just let them in. It's just, no, you're at fault for these people being there in the first place. It's not incumbent on us, and it sure as fuck isn't incumbent on Scotland. Together, we send a clear signal to EU leaders and the UK government that the people of Europe are willing and able to act on our humanitarian values and provide shelter to those who seek refuge from war and persecution. Again, you put assumptions on these people. You don't know that they're fleeing war. You don't know that they're fleeing persecution, but automatically assuming that they do gives credence to these people being able to pump out false asylum applications because they've got little lefties falling all over them. It's not incumbent on us to let these people in. It never has been. And of course, some of their local signatories, Amnesty, what a shock, Bikes for Refugees, Docs Not Cops, Glasgow Refugee and Asylum Seeker Solidarity, Glasgow University Arms Divestment Coalition, Refugee Voices Scotland, Refugee, welcome to Rainbow Unicorn Lands, Scottish Detainee Visitors, STAR, whatever that is, Students for Global Health, the Unity Centre, Ubuntu Women's Shelter, UNESCO Chair, what a shock that UNESCO's involved, they always are, and some of their councillors who support the campaign, Graham Anti-White Campbell, the man that wants to make Scotland a non-racial country. We need a non-racial national identity, because we live in a racist society, yeah. You know, a history of white supremacy. It's our country though, mine and Graham's, you see, but Graham's a Jamaican man, an African man, but who stands there in stupid Jamaican attire while preaching about how Scottish he is. Yeah, that's great. John Letford, Mark Kerr, etc, etc. So, and I'll finish on this. Some of the comments on this are just something, they're remarkable, truly remarkable. I believe in the rights of people to a decent and comfortable life. People need help and we can save them. No person should be left behind. If one person suffers, we all suffer. Refugees are looking for safety and opportunity for a brighter future. Again, these are the assumptions. So when Africans come over here, when the Syrian refugee crisis first began, quote-unquote crisis, right? And Africans and other people from the Middle East, from other countries were jumping aboard, the assumption was this was Syrians fleeing war and persecution. But you just automatically attach this label to every single group that arrived on a dinghy or a boat, whatever it may be. So the assumption automatically is that these Africans, for example, are fleeing war and persecution. You do not know that the people attempting to enter your country are fleeing war and persecution. Assuming that's the case and not getting them to prove that that's the case is the fucking problem here. We cannot leave people stranded in such conditions. Well, that's not our fucking problem. I'm signing because it's a matter of basic human rights. Human rights. They're coming back to bite us in the arse, aren't they? There is still space in Europe, including the UK, for refugees. Ah, yeah, of course there is. We need to offer help, but also address our present refugees in hotels are well cared for. Well, they're well cared for, of course, and half of these so-called refugees you speak of are waiting on processes to be claimed, but they're currently housed in hotels paid for, of course, by the taxpayer. It's a great little scheme they've got going over here. you know. So don't sit there and talk about whether or not they're cared for. These people are our neighbours, and we are required to do to them as we would do to ourselves. Well, that's great, but considering we seem to be ignoring the concerns of native Scots and we're putting the rights of people from all over the world above our own, I think your comment's not warranted here, Robin Webster. I'm signing because we cannot forget about people suffering in these camps, and we need to support them. Sorry, there should be free movement for all. People, not profit. Care, not cages. Oh, well, fuck off. There is one race, the human race. That's a lie. And we have a duty to protect each other. Open borders, open minds, and open hearts. I advocate for a humane immigration policy. A humane immigration policy. Sounds rather like something the SNP would come out with. We're all in this together, and refugees need our city's help now more than ever. So anyway, I'll leave on that note. Peace.